Hey everyone, welcome to the pop section, and here we will start to make our first steps into the actual simulation world. But before we start, I want to quickly talk about something that is really important to me, and that is the shelf tools and basically why they are evil. I would absolutely not recommend a beginner to use them, and there are multiple reasons for it. So I know this sounds surprising for a beginner because, those icons are right in front of you, but at least you hear it here from me. They are actually a bad choice. And there are many reasons for that. The first thing is you don't actually understand what they are doing. You click on it and something happens and you have no clue what's going on. This is fine if everything works right, but as soon as something breaks, you do not understand what is breaking and you have to learn the nodes anyway. So it's not helping in that regards. The second reason is a lot of those setups actually, unfortunately, are pretty bad. So it's not even, a good preset that you get. And a good example here is when we go into the particles tab, which is, the topic that we will look at in this chapter anyway. Let's create a sphere first on the object level, because then it creates a sub sphere as well. And when I say source particle emission, it asks me to select an object. So I do this, press enter, and now it builds something for me. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what each node is doing. What we will do in the course is we will build, a setup step by step. Every single node we will create by hand so that we actually understand what each part of it does. Especially when later on you have very complex scenes, you need to understand what they're actually doing to solve and change what you want. Like I said, the second problem is, and here we can see this with this shelf tool already, it creates a setup that I would absolutely not recommend. It created 3 nodes on the object level for basically the same simulation. So if we look at the view dependency links, we can see that they are connected. And basically what we see here is the input, the simulation itself, and then the output. Why would you do this? This is a very bad idea. And whenever I see an Autodop network anywhere, I know this is either someone who has no idea what he's doing, or sometimes he or she knows really well what they are doing, but then this is a different matter when you're so experienced that you can, use anything anyway, because you know where the flaws are. But as a beginner, I would not recommend that. Why? Because you have to constantly jump around between the input and then the actual simulation, and then you have to jump back to the output. Here's how I would do it so that you understand why this is better. We can do all this at the same place. We can create a sphere, then we use a PopNet, as we will see in the next couple of videos, and then we can, do something with the output, like, with a transform. We take what comes out of it, and all of this in front of me, what we just saw, is now here connected. It's easy to understand. We can change input, simulation, and output, at the same place, and we don't need to constantly jump around. So it's a really cumbersome setup very often. And also the behavior is actually pretty confusing. For example, I create a sphere again and create a new emitter like we just did. And what it created is, again, 3 nodes. And what it actually does is when I press play, that from this sphere come a couple of points. Now let's create a second object that I want to emit from, because I think, okay, cool, this works well. Let's now add this box and add its own simulation for it. And I click the exact same button again. Then what I get is something different. I do not get a second Autodop network and a second output, but this will be now integrated into the already existing one. Sure, this is changeable. Down here you can actually change this, what it should be applied to, but the whole way those shelf tools kind of react and behave is very unpredictable, because someone, wrote basically a code that is supposed to do something, and it's, you don't know beforehand what this will actually be. Why not just build it yourself? Then you know exactly where everything is and how it works together. Because when I build it myself, like before, I have it this way. I have a sphere, I have a PopNet, and I have an output. And if I want a copy of that, I just copy it, change the input, and everything is easy to understand because I created it myself. And if I want this both to be in the same simulation, I do this myself manually. This is a much better approach. And by the way, this is not just my opinion. I double checked this with a lot of other FXDDs that I know, and they all agree that this is, especially for a beginner, not a good idea. Again, there are two kinds of people that use shelf tools. Absolute beginner that have no idea what they are doing, or super experienced FXDDs who really know those shelf tools inside out and understand the flaws and the workflows very well and basically know what shelf tool is good and which one is horrible. But as a beginner, you don't know that. That said, there is actually few cases where I will use the shelf tools in the course, and that is by analyzing what they're actually doing. So not just blindly clicking them and hoping for the best, but we will actually look at a couple of presets here that we, for example, for the ocean, where we can learn from it what side effects is actually intended as a workflow. And then we don't use the shelf tools anymore, but build those workflows ourselves from what we learned. So as a learning tool, I think the shelf tools can be good, but do not rely on them as a beginner for actual production. Another reason why I think this is actually not just my opinion is that in the last couple of years with Houdini 18, I think it began, SideFX went away from those shelf tools and came up with a new concept, and that is configure presets. So instead of just clicking on a button so that some weird thing happens that you don't fully understand because it creates all kinds of geometry and you don't even know where, they switched to a system where, yes, they give you some help, some presets, but you access them through the menu, and they are called configure presets. So when we use any of the configure presets here, for example, the balloon one, what you can see is it creates multiple nodes for us, but in front of us, directly where we were with our mouse. It doesn't create some nodes, somewhere on the object level, but only specifically where we are right now. Another good example for this are the Pyro configurations, which even create pretty big setups, but they're always easy to understand. There it is, because they are right where I am right now on the sub level. And those we will actually use a lot, but we will not use shelf tools. So yeah, those are the reasons why we will not use shelf tools in the course. Especially as a beginner, I would not recommend them. You don't understand what they are doing. Very often they don't even use very good setups, and they overcomplicate a lot of things for no particular reason. So don't use them, and be very careful when you see tutorials using them. For some reason, even SideFX has some tutorials using shelf tools, which I find pretty problematic. But now you've heard it from me at least. Build your setups one by one, and this is what we're going to do from now on in the rest of the course. So I hope this is helpful, not too much rambling. Thanks very much, and see you later. Cheers.